Hi, welcome to another Coffee with Bruce. So today we're going to talk about decentralized finance, or DeFi, which is a really interesting class of applications that are emerging on top of blockchain. Apparently not interesting to cats. And hopefully you know a little bit about blockchains. If not, there's a video that I did about them earlier. But really all you need to know for the purposes of this discussion is that a blockchain is a distributed ledger where we can record transactions in a distributed way. And you probably know that blockchains are often associated with cryptocurrencies. Some of those are sort of native to the blockchain. So for example, the Bitcoin blockchain has its own built-in currency, Bitcoin, but people have also invented new currencies that run on top of existing blockchains. You may have even heard of things like CryptoKitties, which are an early form of token built on top of a blockchain. People keep on coming up with all kinds of new coins and tokens. You've probably heard recently about non-fungible tokens, which are maybe a little bit more like baseball trading cards, and compared to fungible tokens, which, for example, a coin is an example of a traditional thing which is fungible, one coin being pretty much the same as another coin, and you can swap them and you don't really care which one you have, whereas with non-fungible tokens there's more of a sense of uniqueness. But all of these things are classes of assets and people buy and sell them, and of course if people are buying and selling things, that creates marketplaces. Now, decentralized finance is the idea that we can build these marketplaces in a totally decentralized way, which contrasts with traditional ways for buying and selling stuff where we often go through a central party. So if you think about how would you go and buy a stock today, you would typically go to your stockbroker and say, I would like to buy some shares of this particular stock and I'm willing to pay this price. And the stockbroker looks for somebody who's willing to sell at that price, matches the buy order to the sell order, and processes the transaction. So the interesting thing about decentralized finance is you can do exactly what I just described, except you do it without the stockbroker in the middle. Instead, it's done through code. And the key innovation that enables this is the idea that code can run on the blockchain. We have these things called smart contracts. So with your smart contract, you can say, I would like to buy asset X and I'm willing to pay a particular price Y. And if the conditions emerge where that asset's available at that price, your transaction is executed automatically. And then the result of that transaction is written into the blockchain. So now you'll see the ownership of the asset is transferred from one person to another, and whatever currency or coin or token you were using to buy that asset, it's now transferred from the buyer to the seller. All of this is done by a piece of code completely automatically. That is the essence of a smart contract. And one of the interesting things about them is you push these contracts out and they are visible to anybody who's on the blockchain, and you can see them in advance and you can actually verify that they're correct, or at least that's the hope. Of course, occasionally software has bugs, and so that's actually an ongoing area of research to make sure that contracts are correct. But this is definitely creating really interesting opportunities. And at the moment, that is now a multi-billion-dollar business. That the DeFi business is really generating a lot of interest because it creates opportunities to do things in a way that it hasn't been done before. So that is the essence of decentralized finance. It's replacing all of these things that were previously very centralized, like exchanges, with distributed code. And of course, the claims about this are perhaps somewhat overheated, but one of the claims would be that you can get better security by not having so much trust in a central party. So there are a few other challenges, like the fact that the timeliness of these transactions is really important. That's true in traditional finance as well. And blockchains today are actually not that great for doing timely transaction processing. And so that's actually another really interesting area. And we'll probably talk about that in a future video. But anyway, for now, hopefully that gave you a quick idea of what decentralized finance is all about. And I'm sure we'll talk about it again on another Coffee with Bruce. Perfect.